Hi everyone. Did you have a good lunch? Okay. So what we're going to do this afternoon is work a little bit with plants, which are different than slime mold, but also similar to slime mold.
Slime mold
So we're going to spend just a few minutes here because we don't have very much room planting seeds, and then we're going to go back over to that room and talk about the differences between slime mold development and plant development. Okay, so here's how we're going to plant these seeds. Just going to take, let's do this first. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of toilet paper and put it in here. Just like that. So toilet paper can be used for all different kinds of things. Okay, then we're going to take, we have 3 different kinds of seeds, black, green, and brown. I think they're all different kinds of lentils. Okay, and then you'll take a few, maybe 5 or 6 of each kind, and put them in your container. Okay, we're going to follow these seeds. You could pass that around. We're going to follow these seeds over our 10 days together. So yeah, take 5 or 6 of each one. Okay. So every day we're going to draw what our seed looks like, right? So here you have these magnifying glasses so you can look carefully at your seed and draw a picture of one of each kind of your seed in your notebook, and that's called day 1, the first day. Okay, so an important part of being a good scientist. Are they listening? An important part of being a good scientist is taking very careful notes. So you want to make sure and do a nice drawing of your seeds. You could take a picture, but drawing is better because when you draw something, your brain thinks about it a little differently. So we're going to draw how our seeds look every day, okay? So everybody's going to have 5 or 10 black seeds, 5 or 10 green seeds, and 5 or 10 brown seeds. So you'll have. So in the end, you should have 15 to 30 seeds. Total. Okay, so after you draw a picture and look carefully at your seeds, draw a picture, and make some notes what they look like. Okay.
그래서 다 디나로 중앙에 말루사 소나 아니 계란 직담 나로라 아니 사변도 때 값을 사변도 sobda 컨디션 디마 리모티스.
And you can work with a partner if you want.
그래서 미니스 냠도 치네 디레스 체와케 마레스.
Okay, and when you're done, you'll add a little water behind the cameraman over there. Add a little water to your toilet paper so it stays damp. You can close it up and write your name on it.
네, 심지어 다 됐다 당봉이라. 네가 사변 상만 루사베 제라 아니 카르실라는 나노로 sobda 든조 컨디션 두치 테스 마티스. 티사베 제라 디나 추디스 루스 데블로 출 요레스. 출러서 제라 카드마 갭스.
Yeah, you probably, maybe you don't need to close it all the way, but you could close it like that. And you need to be able to find yours every day, so make sure however you label it, that you know it's yours. Like if everybody's named Lobsang, you can't all write Lobsang on here. You have to write your name or number or whatever.
제가 디나로 밀롭산 주정아 주나 롭산 주정아 롭산 티셔는 디그레스는 디마타스 디마 임베게 아니 다 가르치기 위해 소소소가지 모시에 바다지 티우로 지스니.
And you'll add just a little water, just enough water, maybe. Can you get like a beaker next door or something? Because I'm afraid they'll flood the thing. So we'll have a little pourer, and you can just pour a little water in there. Yeah, you just want to get this damp, not too much water. Okay. Any questions about what we're going to do? And then when you're finished, you can just put it against the wall over there. Put your sample Okay, and you can work over there in that room. You could work here. You could work over there. If you need room, you could work on that table back there.
내가 그 고주로 지스 파드네 디그레 소드네 디그레 소소 리모트 오로와 당봉에는 같이 오래 리모트 카르티와 디스타빙 리모트 카리오도 추말로고는 리모트고요 안디말 리모트에 든조 사제 구도나 든조 고아 파소예 고아도는 유스
So, remember our big question.
How
does one cell become many different kinds of cells? Right? So this morning we talked about slime molds and how slime molds start out as independent cells and then come together and form dependent cells.
Slime mold ki an chidan le pega time du zamba tangu yana kozo ane rawan je ki tabung de reshas dene ko khale ane kozo sonyam de duche ane sokwa ji chasung sokwa di khade san tabung tumale sobe ko sokwa di an thar nang lo yu tabung de pinju rawan re mindu chi tene tene ne goya de reshas.
So we'll talk much more about this the rest of the week, but what happened was, as we said, single cells become many cells. So this slug is thousands of cells, right? And then the spore is even more cells, right? And we'll talk more about how that happens, but I think you can see that one kind of cell is now having to become a different kind of cell. That's the main thing for today.
kyang ba yin bi ki ane chende ge ngobo mangbo chi so che ane thabung thumal thebe ki ane ta slug sidu sambala ane chende chik simjen chiraba chik cha ane ko ane dinik sul ngol gyudu sama dik nanglo la ya thabung mangbo chi yo cheda ta dik nga zo khadda dewa cha yor yung yor la na thabung rik chik ne thabung rik na zo da ane thuma chadan dik da dewa yo cha yores.
So you guys pointed out that it was probably doing this because it's beneficial to survival, right?
So,
and we decided there was some kind of signal or external stimulus, some kind of stress from the environment that probably set this in motion.
아니 내단 들은 결과야라 체인지 요레스 체인데 권 용기요스 라빈베나 코리우네 용기요레스 제자다 코리우키 아니 다직라 아니 코주키타 야린 치기요레스.
So it seems that, and it makes some intuitive sense, that if you have more cells as an organism, if you have more than one cell, that you can do more things. That makes some intuitive sense, yeah?
제가 아주 제가 안 kadnamgyugi an samutangdang ki rikwa phyju chebimbena kira ane thabung chigle ma yobimbena thabung rik thuma yobimbena ane kirang sugbu nanglola ane lega ma che thubiyo lega nazo che thubiyo dinde ane phendo yor samye de samdang chugros.
Makes sense.
Resam gudwes hugudwes.
Now it could be that one monk could build this room, maybe if you had many years, but if you had 100 monks, you could build this room in a few weeks.
제가 아주 강바디낭 징한디낭 긴두바직 미시메나 긴두바직 디긴 징한디 갸투로 왔어. 이나 로카시스 고르도고 레스. 아니 저 갸탐바이나 저 갸탐바기 강바디 찍고 임베나 아니 두나 카시스 난직 토도고 레스. 아주 징한 시겨다.
Why?
하지네 we are putting our collective effort.
Collective effort, so why is that better?
제가
Faster?
아니 미 망고직 누와냠도 뽕임베나 디 찍 누발레 가진 야요레스. We can do different kinds of walks by each individual.
Very good.
Some can make light and others can build the bricks.
Right. Different jobs for different monks. So it's the very same thing. Instead of one monk having to learn how to do the bricks and the light and the electricity and the plumbing, instead of one monk having to learn all those expertise, all those different jobs, you could have 2 monks to do the plumbing, 2 monks to do the electricity, 2 monks to do the bricks. That's exactly what's going on in these multicellular organisms.
So that the rest 미지기 로소단장 사바직단장 추소단장 안데 제대월에 타와니기 안 로소단장 가시기 안 직보직단장 가시기 추티단장 빈비나 아니 레라요레스 조사이레스 디나시 아니 데데게 아니 타붕 투말레 투베게 아니 심제데 juk nanglola 아니 타붕 누줄레가 지난데 지기yorda 소소소 드무마임비게 첼레레요레스.
So there's different ways that evolution has, different ways that have evolved to come up with this organism that has many different cells. Because we've just decided that if you have more cells, you can do more things, right? So that's an evolutionary advantage. There's different ways that evolution has evolved or come up with to solve that problem.
제가 데데게 에는 아주 타붕 릭 만다 망보 요와디 영양 컨디션이 용요레스라도 삼발라 아니 안 펜규르 기도당 토네 중요레 제자다 타붕 장반에 타붕 도마 차당라 아니 그 펜규르 기도당 아니 망고요 초레스 이나야 고 로당 가주 유밀 마도 발레베 그 디우 타붕 도마 예베 속바디 아니 캡상 근데 요디 요레스 타붕 릭 만다 망고 요디 레가 첼레버 망고 차두 요레스.
So one way is the slime mold. That is, you start out as single cells and then you gather all the single cells together into a bag right? And now you're multicellular. And this is the bag of all these different cells. And now you have a slug. And now these cells, once they form together, they divide again. So now, that's one way to get a many-celled organism, right? It's just bring together a bunch of single cells into one.
그래서 다들 선발스 단다 아니 슬라임 몰스에 디조게 드네 치기어레스 콘조 탕부 랑가 아니 타부 레렉 트로베 애니 진행 뭐 차비기어레스 그래서 콘조 갈레 아니 소소치 속바질 차 인도 삼발라 디그 낭로라 아니 공부직 차루레스 디 차사웨 gel라 아니 다디 낭로 코랑 타부 탕봉에 타부 망부 요데조 라니 아니 곱셰테제 아니 타부 망부 아니 릭만다 망부 차루기어레스.
And what are the different jobs? What are the different jobs that these cells can now do?
그래서 다 타부 만다 망부 여러 디나로 그래서 콘조케 아니 레가 만다 같이 두레스. 자 콘졸단 라타 일단은 같이 두레스. Some they do some is develop or grow.
Okay.
They also need to reproduce
Yeah.
new cells.
Yeah. So some cells are going to become the base here. Some are going to be in this stalk, and some are going to be in here, and then some are inside to reproduce to start again. So
저분도 내가 고시가 우도스 카시 안에 콘주케 안에 자와 심사로도 차루도스 카시케 안에 동부 차시 차루로스 카시 안에 고그 빠빠가 차시 차루로스 카시 고그 빠빠 나로 예베케 안에 저분도 사변도 차루로스 사변도 gemma 카르차루스 라미베나 딩 통메케 안에 사변 디다 다오 차루로스.
So you can see that the cells that are here are probably have a different structure and a different function than the cells that are here, right? So here, everybody has the same job, the same thing, and now we become different.
그래서 다 델리베나 디나로 자월 예베케 아니 샴스기네 자월 예베케 아니 섭다 로가르도스 동볼 예베 섭다 로가르도 골 예베 섭다 로가르도 섭다 로가 이마 손자 코바 로가 차 코바 로가 요 손자 콘조 칠레 로가 차기 요레스 그래서 다 단지 델리 코소소 랑가와 이베 근데 갑슬라 아니 콘조 상마 아니 켜와요 말레스 타분 릭직바 차코 타분 섭다 카리요 코레 코 칠레 카리요 디치기요 나다 데익 낭로 레사 비슈도 삼발라 콘조 디피니시트 레도 삼발라 아니 소소케 아니 로 레가 로가 넘버 로가 요 차두 요레스.
So that was our goal. Our goal was to get more cells so we could have different jobs specialized by different monks or different cells, right? That was our goal. So we achieved our goal.
그래서 다 아주 미국에서는 냠도 소제 소바디 냠도 소임베나 아주 타붕 릭 만다 망보라이데스 참다 릭라나 만다와 타붕 체와 요딩인 그래서 체와 요데와 든데 만다와 망보라 요도 삼발라디 아니 아주 타와 칠레 벌로가 로가 요도라와스 그래서 디임베나 만주 레가디 아니 야 체투그레스 요 체투그레스.
Pretty good.
그래서 고주기 디치도스 야부도스.
We still haven't talked about how this happens, but we've just said we see that it happens and it makes sense. Tomorrow we'll talk more about how it happens. Today we just want to see that it happens.
그래서 드링은도 드네 럼바 드네 델라 카진 컨디션 겨르고에 드네 델라 컨디션 겨르고에 겨르탄 두콜 드링시에 마레스 그래서 고 드네 겨르고 열다 드네 두르다 슬라야 잠셰샤 요레스 그래서 아니 컨디션 겨르고에 딩은도 사니시에 투투라이르 사니시기 있어.
Okay, any questions about that so far?
디 돌아 아니 저이웨스.
Where's the mic?
I'll tell you. So, Theodore, is this a slime mold or is this a slime mold?
They're all slime mold, but they have different stages of their life cycle. Just like when you were a baby, you look like this. When you were a teenager, you look like this, and now you're grown up and you look like this. They're all part of the same organism, but they're different stages.
Slime mold lana kores. Dikena chunju kapsre, dikena mirgen cha sayo jelre. Dikena shigala mudela.
slime mold can have a cyclical life. They make more single cell from these spores. Yeah.
그래서 다 콘조 단다 슬라임 몰스야디 아니 소소기 메제 코라코다 타마들 샤샤야디 아니 단다 스포르 삼발라 아니 코랑게 사변들이다 디 샤샤기 도스.
And humans and usually plants, sometimes plants are different. How do we continue the cycle?
그래서 코라이나 코랑게 타이 릭 준도 코라코다 두스코디 도아 미다 지싱 망부지 로가요레스 간주 디 코라든 코로와 카네스 지그레스. 지바 카네스. Me kanes mirgancha antama khadi ale so it's similar to us also.
Yeah.
First we came from our parents as egg and sperm.
Yep.
Then we become adult, and then we produce kids, and then they will move on.
Same thing. It's all. You start with one cell. You make many cells, so you can do many things. Then you make one cell again. Make many cells, do different things, make one cell again. So we're kind of like slime molds, I guess.
Slime mold nangshi, nanzo kharchire. Drepung ne drepung thuma yugyo cha dine yang drepung chi cha yang drepung chi kerang ba drepung ji se kerang cha kerang pu se pu de thangmo yung yung sa khwan yung gore drepung chi se orwa cheza dile sambala kora ji cha san thep so and do das
Similar but very different, right? At least me, I'm very different than a slime mold. Maybe I don't know.
cheza an slime mold da nganzo daw cha mongbo dos ina ya ngada da slime mold daw min dos look thuma di this lawyer does, yeah. Yeah, gila khari pe.
Network because maybe because I
so when they are like living individually, then at a certain stage they come together.
Yeah.
So how they communicate with each other?
Okay. Hold that question for tomorrow, please. Hold that question. We'll get to that. That's the how, right? That's the how does it become different, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Very good question. Okay. So there's another way to become multicellular, right? And we just talked about how humans become multicellular. We're not like slime molds. Yes, we make sperm or egg, but then we stay together, we grow, and we make one cell from that. We make many cells from the sperm and the egg, right? And we become human, right? So that's another way to become multicellular, is to start with one cell and divide and divide and divide and divide and divide. That's different than having many cells that come together like the slime mold.
단지 라오나 시타 차분 찍네 차분 투마 양 차분 찍 드네 코라 코르단 디케제 싱두 삼발라 먼저 미다 안에 slime mold 디니니 만다 this your das slime mold 저 당보고 속도 삼반에 카르도 슬라빈 베나 코 차분 찍 고샤 망고테는 차교 레미도스 코 안에 차분 찍 임베 젠데 오고 망고스 루루 차 안에 루루 차네 안에 코 차분 투마다 뎀베 안에 젠데 오고 차도아 소자 차도아 먼저 당모에는 안에 건 지그레스나 사분근 두곤세야디 안에 방문에는 차분찍 임바 차분찍 데 아니 도마차체 는 간주 단다 카리요와디 차교로 왔어
베데 스나무네티 담보통 그 스스로는 차반장단을 심지 뭐지 그랬어 다들 디니 아주 매점바 착각을 지금 티 담보통은 다는 와서 다디 갈때다 코스좀 더더 열어줘라 이나 티콘라 티문라 네 그런 양 그런 공부치 초바치 반 더더 티티 더더 열어지 제가 요 말했어 딩나고 초바치 많이 bakane 하고 그랬어 담보 타방 컨트롤이 되라. 땡은 타방 뜻은 뭐 쳐도요지. 아니 컨트롤 손으로 말해야지. 이마에 나가냐.
내가 지내려. 당분간 되려. 내내 대차다. 내내 대도라.
담보 타방 잔는 게 심지지 컨트롤도 해야 돼.
아?
타방 수수수.
내 눈이 와차서.
되는 담보니 담보 수수수 나오는 게 있어. 이 지나지 저거 찾아. 정말 로드를 수수 띠문라니 인연도 초반으로지 컨트롤 말했어.
Kora get do di tuma mi do. Okay, so I think his answer question is that at this stage it seems that at the beginning there were individual cells. So that means these individual cells are they did not came from another group of cells. They were independent cells right from the beginning. So how you know that they are independent cells right from the beginning, and they are not came from a collective or a multicellular organism?
So how would you know that? How would you test to see if, could you do an experiment to test to see if they came from multicellular or not?
Tadela tanda rawanji nekap simbicaps last chiza ane kora tangbo ane sokwa shebaji nima yungyo yi yamena tangbo kora ne ane kora rawan chenji yi di kirang takje khandes chigin bes ha ko guyo na soda khandes siya yores. Di gang hari me di ha go go yore si yoro da di gang khar go yore sa no sokwa ji me so yung yore do ko tangbo ne ne yo ji ne ma le yore do di ha go yo na di khande imba di ane ta ji khande sina ha go des ko ji ne se ji ane se ji ko se mo ba cha na ta no no ni ja yo na ko chi ba cha ma la ne ta ko se mo ya di che ni du cha. We can take one cell from here and keep it in an enclosed area and see whether it can turn into multicellular or whether it can remain same as before or not.
Yeah, so if you do that experiment, here's what happens. So you have one cell, just take one cell, and you give it some food, like we did with our bacteria. And this divides into two cells. And then each of these cells divides again. And you get something like we saw in the video. Now, we haven't told you what the signal is for differentiation, but the signal is decrease in food. So if the food nutrition goes away, if you take the food away or if they eat up all the food, these guys eat bacteria. So if they eat all the bacteria on the plate, then they start to come together. So if the So good, that's what happens. So we did the experiment and we found as long as they have food, they stay single and independent. When you take the food away or they eat all the food, then they come together and they keep going like that. So they stay here like this until they sense food again. And when there's food again, they start over. Does that answer your question?
냠도 초도 차고 레레라 차고 껴봐 이니까 리베르 따가 먹어.
칼라 용 땅을라서 칼라 용을 땅을라서
칼라 용 땅에 무슨 냠도 집에 직찬을 해라라. 근데 냠도 초바들에 칼라 용 못 먹어 하는지 동거하다. 냠도 초바는 초에 나온 거 차고 레레라 그 리베르 칼라도 먹어라.
아니 거기 뭐였어요?
근데 칼라 그 칼라 찾는 그 초바 찾는 게 있습니다.
So at this stage, if we have like a certain number of individual cells, so these individual cells, they also need food. So when they come together, even though it become one individual, but it has got all the cells that is present in the previous stage. So and these cells, they also need food. So what it makes difference from this stage to stage?
That's a good question.
Why this needs less energy?
That's a good question. So when we become a slug, the slug looks around for food. Maybe just make sure there's no food anywhere. And if it finds food, then it can go back to the stage. If it doesn't find food, it forms this called a fruiting body. And this stage requires no energy. It's just frozen, very little energy until there's food again.
Agelazo, yabuchinya. Khala mangbo ye kapsla. Ani dosin dires, rawachin chudo maje cheche. Khala nyung roda, ani konzo del sobda dine chadu res. Sobda dine chag res itu sama kolon niwa go mares gi yorda yomardas, niwa gores. konzo 상마 잡음 쳐버려. 이나야 다코 칼라 뇽으로 침비 겸센 때는 아니 코 드네 차서 코 단도 아니 가르치 그랬을 라면은 칼라 쪼와 두그랬어. 그래서 당에만은 시 아니 칼라 라나 코 드네 파란제 게만은 시야 수수 로가 카탐 두그랬어. 단도 칼라 마라 파데는 가르치 그래. 안 대차도 델 칼라 고레베스라나 고마레 계란 사비 저 강바다 저 난 약션 조리 저 출루 니마드들이 제오면도 언데나시 안 데두 잠발라 고 로세체 는 니베모 네디레스 사모 So this fruiting body, is this a living thing or
sure,
something
it's
else?
living, but it's taking a break.
Res, chinde re like res. Imena ko thanda parsing tanchi tis cheche lele chinde de res.
So there's a lot of organisms that do this. Frog, especially when it gets really cold. Frogs, bears, all different kinds of organisms. If it's really, really cold, they basically stop and take a break until it warms up again. They just they can go into a hole or go into a cave and just stop working, just very little tiny energy. And then when it warms up again, they start and they're more active.
That the day Nubat Mandala and a parsing language there, Simjin, and Simjim Mangu Yoris, there was Chapa Yan de 2 dogs. You must have Charlie Yan training, and you land Lachi de Dos. Taken Tom Dizo, and the Gunga Dawa Manguch Kala Sagmeo, Yidio, and the Kashisa all Judini, Kalare, Chiva.
So how about the seeds that we just planted? Are they alive?
The Tanjia was a pair of Samuel Stabin Bastandara, Tinjiko Kares. The Chinde, so the Demberes. Yes.
Yeah, they're taking a break because they don't look like they're doing anything. Like a little kid would probably think it's dead, right? A little kid wouldn't know that this is a living thing. If you add some water, it's going to grow. So it's just like the seed. It's just taking a break until the conditions are right. In this case, adding water, and then it grows.
Chinding Chiju Meo Suru, two steady or Samuel. Chesa Conzula, Anne Sada Chuda, the Nekimo, two stage lady doors, pushing using Tevin Bana, and the Sada Dopal, Yawashira Chetu Maras, Samuel Zopal. Chesa Inaya, and Korean Judu Zambako Karchire. Young one Nambian journalist cannot like ring Samuel Korean Karansu, Yurin Bastanji, Karchi, Chuluimba, that's any tears of Yalang race.
Yeah, let's talk about the seed for a minute, because the reason that we're planting seeds, well, first, they're easy to work with, easy to grow. You guys don't mind working with them like you might mind working with animals, and they grow fast.
Because of Mahimba, and Karanso, Samuel Neke Deviki, and Yugudunzo, Tobnere, Tenere, Kardina Kizu Simti Maros, Yansemye, they did say you watching the Yankin this, they were Maros.
But also, they have an interesting solution to coming up with many different kinds of cells to do many different jobs. It's a different solution than slime mold. It's more like humans.
그래서 드가나시 딱 군주 나로는 안에 코난 속에 안에 레가 만다와 망부 요와디 제약 체도라 안에 타붕 릭 만다와 망부 수고 나는 중요하게 코난 속 탑시 열었어. 그래서 디 탑시 디 제산 슬라임 몰라 도 슬라임 몰게 탑시 최단다 안에 군주 탑시 최단 만다와 열에 군주가지 스티싱도 탑시 최단디 아 제가 아주 밀 돌림변은 심진 군주 아주 타니에요 다 슬라임 몰레 밀은 다 체열었어.
So this is the seed that you just planted, and it's just one cell.
제가 다 디단다 안에 계란수 그 사변 들어왔어. 제가 안에 페널 탑셔요. 제가 디 타붕지그레다스.
So in this case, we don't have a bunch of seeds coming together to form a multicellular plant, do we?
제가 안에 그 사변지기 뭐 손자 안에 간주 단다 당분간에 안에 사변 드신 그 사변 망부 주루로 차체 사변직 차도야 되는데 자기면 놓았어. 자기 놓았어.
No, it's different. In this case, what happens? This cell divides into two cells, then those cells divide, and those cells divide, and those cells divide, and those cells divide, and then you start to get this multicellular thing, and that keeps dividing, and finally, not finally, but then we get to this this point here where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of cells, and it's just about to germinate where the little root comes out.
제가 다들 좀 계란도 될 때다스. 제가 디 간자 타붕지그레스. 제가 다 타붕지데 안에 계란 추다 저제 용도 삼발 타붕일 차기레스. 일 차교데 단도 별제 안에 타붕 망부요. 딜레가 망부요. 다 타붕 망 누구 고랑 입든 줄기 차도 그레스. 다 점바 델레도 삼발 데나로 타붕 동타 망부요. 요 마세 다 강게 되냐 가르치그레. But
look, it's just another solution to the same problem. So here we have this complicated fruiting body with spores and stems and this. So we have many different cells doing many different things. And here, same thing. Many different cells. So many cells we can't even draw them. There's thousands of cells. But doing many different, it doesn't matter what these words are. But each one of these words is a different kind of job.
And Kunini, Mandawa Yordanian, Javacha Carrier Slavimena, Dignalo, Rimba Deli to Zambala, Dinam, that Tisamema, Tabu, and the Tona Manguyores. That day Nalo Imena, and the Kurang Iblo, all do they Iblo, the Tigana Chundum Nalola, Tabu Manguchu Joras. That day Nalo did some Tabu rigorous, yes, Katai Rigora, Mandawa Chasa, Savioris Tabu, Patient Della Ming Mangudos, Injig Ming the Zucha. Mingdu Taiwan machine being that Mingdu Kanda Yorsana, Mingdu Red and Dada Gasadula, and a Tabung Rigmanda Radio. This was Susula Timuma in Chile, the netting your dust.
Does that make sense?
This is where was this?
So it's another solution. Instead of having a bunch of single cells coming together to make a multicellular organism so you can do a bunch of different jobs, here you have one cell that just divides by itself to make many cells that do a bunch of different jobs. But in the end, it's the same thing. You get a bunch of different jobs.
Da kuniniga khaddu slavimena tabung tumatsu soche sobeki ane jendeng ngobudi ane tabung mangbu yodini jendeng ngobu chikcha ane dene ane dige ane lega manda mangbu tabung rig manda mangbu yo sonza lega rig manda mangbu che tomyeji dimi yusoya dire doa ta tabung mangbu su sodan di khaddu slavimena deli bena ane tabung chik Korang ane tumbu mangbu chinje, jembel mangbu cheche, ane tabung tuma dembeki, ane jendeng ubu chai doa. Ta devin bena tangbu korani ane tabung mangbu yobeki, ane simjin ring mangbu shiso soche. Ta simjin lagi nere mbu segi na kanamda kari inimene, dende mangbu shiso soche, ane dig sokwa del jendeng ubu chik chache, ane shine ya lega chedante tanji chikwa na shiche dea yungu doas.
And notice something else. The more cells you have, the more it takes longer, right? Because more cells, more time. But the more complex you can get. So if you look here, you see very simple two cells. If you look here, well, these guys look the same, but now you have these that seem to be doing something different. And then with more and more time, you get more and more complexity. Very similar to here, right? This is simpler, but very simple, a little bit more complex. The slug can do this, can do that, and now this very fancy, complex fruiting body.
그래서 다들 당고 고주도 잠발라 처분 직 장대인 무슨자 아니디 니낭로라 아니 직 레가기 차니 임베네레 꿰바기 차니 임베네레 고녀부 요 말레스 처분지 다 처분지 드네 수 좀 대지볼임 내 처분이 차소스 이미시 요 말레스 다 드네 수 윤도 잠발라 아니 델라 아니 찌나 직 요한테 망고 차들이나 릭직바 임베나 드네 마가니 윤도 잠발라 아니 처분조 로가 차두도 왔어 그래서 다 드네 파 두구라 아니 고녀르 처분 릭 망르 레가 망르 드네 지 두고 요레스 내가 나시다 드조 임베나 처분 짱바 아니 딕소베 소바데 딜레디스 고녀가 데네마 안 딜레장 고녀가 안 누바 만다만다 칠레 만다만다 유데오 데네 차르 도스.
So another way to say that is, with more time, you can make more cells. With more cells, you have more complexity, which is the same thing as saying you're doing more jobs. The same organism is doing more jobs.
그래서 다 삼단다지 카르탄 투르슬라비면은 뒤주 망을 로드 잠발라 아니 계란 처부 망 소투레스 처부 망 소투드 잠발라 아니 계란키 아니 차고 세기네레 코바스기네 딘조 아니 고뇨 두레스 디 잠발라 아니 계란을 가르차고 여르슬라미면은 내가 릭 만다 마 체토비아케 아니 누바 마 용구요와 아 데네 차디.
So again, same thing. One monk can do maybe one thing. Maybe one monk is very good with the bricks. One monk gets another monk who's good with the plumbing, then another monk who's good with the electricity, then 10 monks for electricity, then you join with another monastery, right? And then you have a whole city of monks, and they could build more and more complex things. They can take on more and more refined jobs. You could have one monk that cooks veg, and one monk that cooks meat, and one monk that cooks rice, right? So the more monks you have, the more complexity you can have. Usually the longer it takes.
제가 단단한조 단지 긴두바 빼샤인 바스 긴두바 지 강바야고 자투마레스 아니 주다 자든데 여면은 강바데 요 자투그레스 대가나시 아니 가시 찌다야다 가시 추소야 되는 계자시인 바스 다 찌다니 호라 낭로니 아니 미니 숨든데 여위면은 아니 추소니 낭로 미니 숨이나 아니 단도 레가디아 체투그로 와스 그래서 다들 뒤주 망으로 신두 잠발라 오직 오신 바티시 아니 젤 베데 총제 호라 차상 아니 긴두바이나 아니 강바 디자마이 바 아니 강바 고뇨고 쇼드네 소투로 와스 마제 임베나 아니 가서 긴두베 마제 아니 릭만다 망부 아니 샤요소니 샤메소니 아니 가서 투보소니 담만다 소투로 용투로 와스 제자 데네 미망으로 차임도 잠발라 내가 제토비아케 아니 릭 망 루요레스.
And that's what development is. Development is that. More time, more cells, more complexity.
sargeda sarpel la sambala tuzu dorim shindu tu jurim thula ane tabu mangru gonyoru ane lega mangru.
And over the next week, we're going to see that in our plants. We're going to watch this happen in our plants. We'll cut them apart. We'll look in the microscope. We'll draw them. We'll see with time, we're going to get more cells and more complexity. And we'll study more about the slime molds. Same thing. How it works, why it works. We'll answer your question about how and the why of development. But basically, this is what development is trying to achieve. More cells, more complexity over time.
That's Sanyin and Zuki Tanda, Nugu Jigne, and Trabung Tomoyubiki, any Savunjing, the Trabung Tomoyubiki, Nugubadu, Chempel Chitanda Tigre, Cheza, and Denzo Samama, and Tubchi, Chandu Cheshi, all the Necton Cheba Tigre, Jeba Chev Capsula, and Sandanzo didn't shed the Denzo, Tuzu, Dorim Shindula, and Trabuma, the Lagama, Gonyo, Dursia, Denzola Sarjela, Yore, and Nanzo Tanda. Jela and Haku Yores, Jeza, the Zug needs to Haku do Sambala, and Gala Koran Tanji Teotia, and Yongan Candes Jungo, the Kachin Suru Rucha Yores, and Zug Teodanso, Kalele Lente Yores.
So we have time for a couple of questions.
Jeza, Teo US and Tizudus.
Yeah.
Attacking the Sabang mode, any sodium mode, detours lesson. Sabang mode, any Calamarana, any sodium mode detours. The Tindy Kuji Timba in any sodium mode, Lotonda and detours.
So, when you are in this fruiting body stage, if you didn't find any suitable environment to turn back into this stage, how long it can remain in this stage?
Years,
For
forever.
제가 안에 베데 주다도라네 만디가 요마르스 다
Yeah,
이런
so-
것이 오시대 두레스.
So, we think of slime mold as very simple and, humans is very complex, but slime molds can last forever, humans can't.
진짜 먼저 도스테디 sample slime molse 부 탑조도 호노시. 먼저 밀라디 sample 낙도 호노시 통고
Yeah.
요레스.
So maybe they're
이나야-
smart. Maybe they're smarter than we are.
지진나 먼저래 안에 콘조 안에 리바 야 이게다스. 콘조 베데 칼라 마라지다 뒤텐도 데글라나 데투레스. 먼저 데투 마르다스. 대섬도 루르다스.
Now, there's a trade-off with complexity. The more complex, the more monks you have, the fancier building, the fancier town, but the more things can go wrong.
제가 다 디니니가 고 요부요다 안에 레라우요 디니니라 케다 좋은 인가 요디요레스 단지 겐두바 마 요나 안에 강바도 자야 조다 안 강바 릭 만다 마 야토비아 요레스라로 이나 디그나로 노드스여키 안에 따네다디 만 루레스.
The more complex, the harder it is to fix, the harder it is to replace.
그거는 고 가즈스미 임비나 디나나 노드지 쇼가 치임비나 노르주다야데 카부시우 차루레스.
You cut off the tail of a lizard, it grows back. You cut off a person's arm, it can't grow back.
삼바 게레레요. 그래서 휴도 샤시나 게만 산 켈리그리스와. 걔나 락바드 직톱다.
Maybe Pantelis will figure out how to grow the arm back, but it's too complex. There's too many. The cost of complexity. We talked about this when we talked about evolution. The cost of complexity is that it's harder to fix and more things can go wrong.
제가 제시는 게랑 코랑 락바드 톱겨도 제와 소투고 이기래라. 용도 말했어. 다 근데 요 말했을 때투 말해라. 제가 딜라 삼발라 걔랑 고욕보요. 땅 고욕보다 심지 땅은 첸되고 소자스기요. 근데 임베게 종지 카레슬라비면나 걔랑 고욕대 코르시 락바지 더비면나 데야제 마토야 소마도야. 근데 강이 용고요레스.
Okay, one more question, and then I want to leave you with a little bit of homework, small homework.
제가 지워직제 디젤라 아니 나케란솔라 나래 춘주치대 유다스 다 지워 담아딘다스.
근데 처분 너무 깡대라. 깡대는 냠도 루 아니 파게든다 디차이도 도도시나 되기도. 나르게 처분 다가랑 뭐 집어지게 내고래. 야 쿠랑 뭐 쉬어라. 유거든.
디나 요갑스라기 디나
디난 집어라 강나 디니가. 빙가르게 처분 앉아. 아니 마당지즈 망가르게 처분 앉아 집어지게 당고래. 야 신바시 당고래라.
몰라봐. So if we compare he's saying nature or the identity of the cells from here and cells from at this stage,
Yeah.
Are they same or different?
The identity.
Identity, and he's saying nature most identity. I think he's talking about what are the
Very good.
differences and
Very good. So that's kind of what I was going to give for homework, and it's kind of like your question. Can he remind us what his question was?
연락이랑 단지 지워도 가르래스. 소 용해지. 건조 대화 가능시오라. So when the
Food goes
signal
down.
comes,
Yeah.
how they talk to each other,
Yeah.
cells. 단지 개고랑 대화지요. 대다 단다 대화되니 가리라나 계란서 나래 고려 인달스.
Okay. So those are two brilliant questions that lead into tomorrow's morning's discussion.
디산이 쇼게 롭젠다 대화기요리 차디기요레스. 대화되니
And rather than tell you the answer now, I'd like you to think about those tonight for homework. You can work with your friends or you can think about it by yourself. And the questions are, how does the identity change when you move from single cells to the slug?
그래서 다 대원이 네 안에 계란 원단염도 투구 연애래 되면은 소소직보 삼당로 치스.
And
안에 그 나로리에 네 처분데 델 차도도 잠발라 그 처분데 안에 뭐 란잔니기 여러베 뭐 교두 여러베세 디 삼당로 치스.
And assuming that it does change, because it probably does, right? How would you test that.
Kese da de ne ane delma do du zama ko ngo gyurgu yona ane gyurwa di ane nganzu ki ane takje khandes chigin bes gyorshas la di ane takje khandes china ane la tures takje denzo samudang ro chis.
Okay, that's the first question. Second question is, how could these cells talk to each other? So something changes, the food goes away, there's no more food, and now suddenly they start talking to each other and they act like a multicellular organism. How could they do that? What could be the language of their talking to each other?
제가 다 데라 example theoni와 de gelana shilang shi da konzu kuyu nalo khala mewa cha sona o ta khala miduda ta ji cheu du le su khanes lagi yores konzu 제가 ane konzu ge de paso keje she kapsla lungba khari ke pheju chigi yores.
And you can think about this just logically, general ideas, or you can come up with some very specific mechanisms, either way.
자 de ane ko khandesina samya chedang samudang to ne keran samlu ge ta je chene ane chene dire theamashi be theanashi ane ne ju chiraba chigla rodan chiraba chigla samudang che an di korang gone shuban rodan khande sar dil samudang che chene digres.
That's exactly where John Bonner was after he watched those beautiful videos. He asked these very same questions that you asked, and now he had to figure out how he was going to test his ideas.
제가 다행히 존 보너스에 디 코란 당봉에는 슬라임 몰 로니에 콘줄 내가 지단 통두 잠발라 코란라 디와 디니가 요레스코니 제가 다 제라 안 가지고 디와 된줄 컨넥션다 아주 랭 칼레 라고 요레스.
Okay, last thing. Remember, you started an experiment today. You started planting your seeds. When a scientist starts his experiments, he thinks about them, he checks on them. You can go over there anytime and check and see how they're doing. We'll check on them in regular time, but you want to be thinking about what's going on over there with that experiment and checking in on it every now and then, right?
ताई केनांसो ट्रेनिंग ताजे छे बस ताजे छे गोजु योरदास निमा थांबोला साबेन ताबशा योस सेने बदन जो सोसो कि ताजे जे छेदु संबला थुजु तागदा ला दिनेदा तागदा दिग दु मिदु ताको खर्चाशास तागा दुरतास.
And always make a note. Whenever you do anything in science, always write down what you did and do a drawing if you can. So always keep track of what you're doing so you don't forget. And if something goes wrong or something strange happens, you can go back and check your notes.
대한시 안내 계란 길래가 가르 제비면나 딱지 되단 대월래가 가르 제비면나 가른 통소나 대주 상마 안내 마신디 게이레스 리모트 게이레스 마모발라 안내 텔 쩐 쇼소나 안내 에메 신디 게샤교 된졸 마치시 게체 다 쩐쇼 고야 가리 인사레 안내 된졸 따야 요레스.
Thank you.
투지나스